Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is my second attempt at making this video because I was almost through making it and then it crashed. So, gotta start over. Not really sure what I'm doing here. Alright, so I'm not really technically savvy and I don't really know how to get the frame the way I would like it, so we'll just have to go with it the way it is. So my name is Reggie. I am a late diagnosed autistic person, and welcome to my channel. And right now I'm doing a little series on autistic burnout. So I've made a couple of videos that I posted over the past couple of days, and I will link them into the description. So this is the third in the series, and the reason I wanted to make this one is because when I made the second video, a friend of mine watched it and he asked me a question, and I thought it was a really good question, so I thought I would share it and answer it in a video. So the question is, when you say masking through your neurological breakdown, which is something that I talked about in the last video, what had happened was I was in my last year of university and I did not know I was autistic at the time. No one knew that I was autistic at the time. I just got diagnosed when I was 47, so a month before I turned 48. And I had, back then when I was in college and in school, there was no understanding of autism, and so there was no such thing as an IEP. There were no services or anything like that. There was nothing. And so I never had any kind of help with my autism or my disabilities at all, because nobody understood, nobody knew anything about them. So I had been masking for decades, and the pressures of university were really, really challenging. I was a good student. I was a really good student. I was on honor roll, dean's list, all that. But I was almost done with my degree. I was getting a bachelor's in music, and I ended up having a neurological breakdown. And it was just a result of an accumulation of masking and autistic traumas and things that had never been addressed or had never been even understood, and I ended up having to drop out, and I never finished and never got my degree. But even during that time, when I was having this this neurological event, I had been so conditioned to mask that I continued to mask while I was having it. So no one knew that anything had happened to me. I don't know if you guys heard the thunder outside. We're having a magnificent thunderstorm. But anyway, so that's what this question is referring to. So he asks, when you say masking through your neurological breakdown, how does that make you feel? Who are you masking from? Friends, family, society, yourself? And so that was his question. So my response was, that is a great question. Masking would make me not only feel physically worn out and drained and exhausted, but emotionally it made me feel invisible and insecure. It made me feel fake and inauthentic. It also prevented me from discovering my own true self and identity. The only time I could ever truly just be me in an authentic way was when I was hiding in isolation or just completely alone. And it was very difficult because people would always accuse me and reprimand me, telling me that I was fake. But I had no choice, because if I allowed myself to be authentic, I would get bullied for being authentic. So it was very confusing and very psychologically painful. I remember one time I was alone, parked in my car, about to go into a meeting, and one of the other people who was attending the meeting saw me. Now, this is a person who had known me quite well. Um, of course, the person didn't know I was autistic at the time. I didn't even know at the time. But this person was someone who, um, I guess, I could say was relatively close to me in whatever sense of the word that could be. But this person knew me, so it wasn't like a stranger. Um, so she saw me in my car, and I was smiling. Um, I don't remember what I was smiling about, but it was something really awesome that I was smiling about, that I've been thinking about. And during the meeting, she pulls me aside, and she said I was being fake because I was alone in my car. And so, by her standard of thinking, that's the conclusion that she came to. And this is what she actually said verbatim. She said, "If you are by yourself, there is no reason you should be smiling like that. So you are being fake. And you need to stop that." That's what she actually said. Um, so my guess is that she was probably thinking that the only reason I would have to smile like that is if I were engaged in a social interaction with someone else, and that is what would be necessary for that response to occur. Um, I personally think that's a bit ridiculous, but whatever, right? So, anyway, unfortunately, that was not the only time that sort of thing has happened to me. So, what happens in a situation like this is that other people have an idea in their own minds of what you're supposed to act like socially. And, this is something that they have it kind of ingrained in them because they understand social norms, they understand social nuances, they understand all of these kinds of, ins and outs of how society is supposed to work and how it's supposed to look and how social interactions are supposed to work. As autistic people, that's not something that would come intuitively for us. That's not something that, like, for somebody like me, that's not something that actually really hits my radar very much. So it's not something that I would really know or understand or focus on or, pay that much attention to. And it's not that one way is good or bad. It's just different. It's just I'm different. I focus and understand different things. Um, so so what happens is that these people have an idea in their minds of what you're supposed to act like socially. And if you don't act exactly as they believe that you should, they reprimand or bully you, and they make you feel less than adequate. So you spend your whole life trying to act in a way that you think people want you to act. And then I continued, and I said to him, it can also create a sense of fear, even towards your friends and family, because you never know when someone is going to bully you or reprimand you like that lady did. When she said what she said to me, I became incredibly insecure because I was trying to figure out what offense I had committed to deserve being told that I shouldn't be allowed to smile when I'm alone in my car. It took me many years to finally realize that I had done nothing wrong, just because I smiled. But because my emotional level is that of a 4-year-old and my social understanding is also that of a small child, probably around like 8 to 10, the problem is that if someone reprimands me like that, I might think that they're actually right and I might believe them because I don't have social understanding. So let's say if you were to say something like that to a little kid who doesn't have social understanding, like a little 4-year-old or something, they would they might have a tendency to actually believe you. And so that's kind of what happens to me. So I'm trying to see where I was here. So I end up masking more, trying to um, comply because someone I trust told me that I needed to. Then the more I mask, the more I get accused of being fake. So then I try to be authentic. But then, if I'm authentic, I start to show more of my autistic traits. And then I get bullied for being authentic. So I mask again. And that cycle just goes around and round and round like that. But the insecurity and the harm that causes, it's really, it's a lot. It's really big. And it creates a cycle where I was never able to feel safe, even with my family or my friends. There was a level of safety that it just did not exist for me. So that's very difficult. Um, so yeah, and then when he asked if I was masking from myself, I had to think about that because I wasn't masking from myself because I never really truly believed that there was anything wrong with me. I believed that I was viewed as something intolerable. But in my own being, I did not feel intolerable to myself. So I didn't have to mask from myself. I could be authentic. I could be real. I could just be, Reggie and just enjoy my own self. But I could only do that when I was completely alone, because otherwise there was a possibility of rejection, of bullying, of all kinds of things. And so yes, I wasn't masking from myself. I was definitely not doing that. But you can see how if this is the way that you have to live your life, your entire life, living under that kind of pressure and living under that kind of stress, it really takes its toll. It really causes enormous amounts of energy drain. And so burnout is just going to happen. There's really not a lot of ways to escape it if you're under that kind of a pressure cooker all the time. So that's a big thing. Now, I wanted to talk about something else that really affects me when it comes to burnout, and that is hypocrisy. And again, it's an energy thing. It's because it takes a lot of energy to to deal with that and to to understand and get through that and have to do it on a daily basis. You know, it's one thing if you're experiencing these kinds of things every now and then, um, occasionally, because you have time to recover. And you also have relationships and social interactions that allow you to be authentic and really celebrate your authenticity. But if you're someone who is constantly being criticized for their authenticity and you are constantly being challenged for your natural ways of existing, and that is something that you experience almost every single day, you have no time to recover between events. You just don't. And if there's no recovery, there's no healing. It's not possible. So that is a big difference because a lot of people say, well, I've experienced that. And I'm like, yeah, but you experience it every single day with 99% of your relationships? And they're like, oh, no, you know? So there's no, there's no recovery. There's no healing that can happen. And then because there's no ability to heal, there's going to be a consequence, and that consequence will oftentimes be burnout. The other thing too is that when your authenticity is always being challenged, it's very difficult to be in touch with your own identity. Um, it's very difficult to develop your own identity or to even understand that you can have your own identity. So I know for me, it took me a really, really long time to come to grips that I even had an identity that was mine. And I was watching a YouTube video um, a few months ago, and I don't remember which video it was. I I wish I knew because then I would link it, but it was really powerful. This one woman, she was autistic, or she is autistic, and she was doing a webinar, and she was explaining how masking her entire life had affected her so profoundly that she had no ability to connect with her own body because she basically didn't have an identity. Because when you're masking, every single person in your life is different, and everyone has a different expectation of what they need for you to be. So you're constantly shifting your performance in order to meet whatever standard whomever you are with wants you to have. So it's really hard to have your own sense of self. And so she was explaining how she had masked so much for her whole life, and she had lost, or she had never developed any ability to have a connection with her body, and so she could not feel anything within her own body. And it had gotten so bad that she had gotten an infection and ended up in multiple organ failure and had no idea that anything was wrong because she didn't feel anything. And that almost cost her her life. And fortunately, she was able to somehow figure it out and get help. But it's it's really shocking how serious the consequences of something like masking can be. So we have to be aware of that. We have to really consider that. But I'd mentioned, hypocrisy and how that can also affect me and make me go into burnout because it's a lot of drain to have to try to understand hypocritical behavior because it doesn't make logical sense to me. I can't really understand it, and so it's it takes a lot out of me whenever I'm in a situation like that. And I'll give you an example. I was at a dinner, and there was one particular person at the dinner who has a habit of sucking his teeth very loudly after he eats. And that is a really big misophonic trigger for me. I do have misophonia, that's one of my triggers. And so at the time where we were, it was quiet enough that I was able to remove my headset. I have to wear these things 24/7, basically, literally. And it's very, very rare that I am in a place that is quiet enough to be able to remove them and just enjoy allowing my ears to breathe and not having to feel the weight of them on my head and being able to just relax and enjoy not wearing them. And so that was one opportunity where I could do that. So I had taken them off and we had eaten, and then this person starts sucking his teeth like really, really loudly. And I was like, oh no. Now, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be rude, you know? And now, these people all know that I'm autistic. They know me extremely well. They've known me for a very, very, very long time. Pretty much my whole life. And they know that I'm autistic. They know how sensitive my sensory issues are, especially with sound. They see me with the headphones all the time. They know this about me. And so I didn't say anything, and I just took the headphones and I just put them on, which is something that would be completely normal for me to do. And so this person, who knows that this is a normal thing for me to do, looks at me and says, oh, so now you're going to be rude and put those things on so you can't hear us? And I'm like, yeah, okay. First of all, I can hear you perfectly well with them on. And you know that because you see me with them all the time and you talk to me with them all the time. And secondly, there was apparently no response or reaction to the rudeness of this person sucking his teeth. Yet the minute I use something that they know is a medical aid for me, all of a sudden I am yelled at for being rude. That is, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what that is. I'm like, wow, really? It's kind of, I mean, and people don't get it. Like, for somebody like me, wearing a device like this, it's similar to a person wearing a prosthetic. The help that a device like this does for me has a similarity to the help that someone who doesn't have a limb might um, you know, get if they have a prosthetic. It's a medical device. It really is. It's an accessibility device. But yet, for some reason, the fact that I put it on because I have a medical issue, a neurological issue, and this is a assistive device that allows me and helps me to function as best as I can with my neurological issue, all of a sudden I am rude because I chose to use it. So, again, that's one incident out of so many incidents that are similar that I have to deal with all the time. And I'm like, wow, is there really a reason for that? Do we have to be, oh, did you see the lightning? We're having a magnificent storm right now. But do, do we really have to be so judgmental? Can we just give each other room to breathe? Just give each other a break. And there goes the thunder. um, but yeah, it would be such a better world to live in if people didn't feel like they had to judge the, our differences so intensely, so harshly. I remember I was at a restaurant with someone, and I don't think people realize how incredibly difficult it is to eat at a restaurant. All the sensory stuff, it's a lot. It's really really a big deal. And the person I was with, I really really love dearly, and I'm happy to do anything that this person wants to do, and I was happy to be there and do that with them. But it was very overwhelming. And so I started rocking back and forth, which is a stim that I do all the time. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it because it was a neurological, regulation kind of thing. And the person made it a point to say to me, "Oh, you're rocking back and forth." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." um, I'm like, Why? Why do you need to point that out? And what happened was I immediately became so self-conscious that I stopped. And stopping that stim prevented me from being able to have some kind of neurological soothing and neurological regulation to help me get through that moment, that situation. So, we want to be careful. We want to be careful about what we expect of people. We want to be careful how we treat people. Um, my phone keeps beeping. Sorry about that, guys. So, because all of these things, all of these little comments, these things like hypocrisy, like projecting, all of these things can cause someone like me to be so overwhelmed by them that having to deal with them on a constant basis along with having to deal with all of the issues that I have from being autistic, it's too much. I can't do it. I really can't do it. And I will burn out, and I will have massive consequences. You know, I also have a lot of health issues. Many autistic people have significant health issues. And if you've ever been sick, or if you've ever had a health issue, you know how draining that is. You know how difficult that is. And so when you think about a population that is notorious for having health issues, along with all of the things that they have to deal with, the sensory things, the executive functioning issues, the communication issues, all of the stuff that we're having to navigate, and that are not easy to navigate. When you add unnecessary social judgment, and it's every day, all the time, almost every relationship that you have, almost every interaction that you are a part of. And I'm not saying all, I'm saying almost, because there are people who are wonderful. There are people who really do care and who really do make a great effort. But many people don't. And so when you're having to deal with this so frequently, burnout is going to happen. And we now are beginning to understand how devastating that can be, and the damage that can do, and the lives that can be lost. So, more food for thought. And I think the next video I'm going to do to round out this series is on ideas and thoughts on how we can change this. Oh, more lightning. And things that we can do, not just as autistic people, to try to mitigate the effects, or try to do the best we can to prevent this from happening, but also as a society to try to really protect our most vulnerable populations. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.